All right, well, thank you. We'll get started here today. Introduction purposes, I'm Matt Warda with BP3. I also have with me Bill Smith. I'll be going through and doing some introductions and kind of talk through some use cases of some common patterns we've addressed with intelligent automation, and then Bill will go through a short demonstration of a pilot that we did with one of our customers from that perspective. So what is intelligent process automation from that perspective? So from a technology perspective, it's the bringing together of cognitive or machine learning, BPM, and RPA from a platform perspective. But the problems that it solves is really how do I create the best user experience or client experience by bringing together my front, middle, and back office operations. And also how do I improve the employee experience by removing all the mundane, repeatable tasks that you've been hearing throughout the past couple of days, right? And let your employees focus in on the most interesting, challenging, and rewarding work, and that's servicing your customers and providing the knowledge and experience that they have. Okay? So go to the next slide. I have a clicker. Wait, this one? The big green one, not the palm tree or exploding firework. So who is BP3? So we are a process automation service provider. We are here, you can see the little Forrester wave that just came out in Q3, where we're ranked as one of the leaders. Kind of proud of this, and very thankful for our customers that we've allowed us to work with them on multiple transformation initiatives and providing automation across the spectrum. We've worked with over 1,000 solutions that we've deployed from that perspective. Looking at kind of what we do from this perspective, right? So we specialize in process automation. So everything that we do is in the context of what's your business process, what's your strategic initiatives, and what are the outcomes that you're looking to drive. So I'd say that while we're a lot of technologists, from a capability perspective, our love and tenacity is really falling in love with your business problems and understanding what it is that you're trying to achieve and partnering together to get you there through the application of automation, okay? From that perspective. So we look across from I guess the middle boxes in there. We specialize in RPA, robotic process automation or task automation, business process management, Bizagi, of course, decision management, and as well as enterprise content management, which we include data capture as well as both storage and retrieval of unstructured data. And we also look at that and say, how do we apply artificial intelligence and machine learning as a framework across all those things instead of a bunch of little things that we do differently across that. And we'll be going through today an example of a solution that has some assets that we've provided and built and we provide for our customers combined with Bizagi and UiPath to deliver some patterns. Okay? I put this in here when we sent it in because I wasn't sure, but I think from everything I've heard in the last 2 days, I think robotic process automation is something people are familiar with. Is there anyone here that doesn't know what it is? Okay. That's the best slide today. I just get to skip it. So what we're talking through is a scenario today that leverages something from us called the Cognitive Request Router, or CRR. What it does and what it provides from a value perspective is the ability to take natural language in text or voice format and receive it, classify it, so give it a meaning, understand the intent of the customer. So I send an email, what's this request type, and we'll go through 3 scenarios and then go through a demo of and a deep dive into another one a little bit further today or later today. It allows us to track all those requests that are coming in so we can see what's coming in, what type of requests that are coming in, how are they being classified, with what confidence levels, and then we can route them, right, automatically without human interaction. So a request via, say, an email comes in, we understand what it is, we then route it, and we can route it to a bot or via UiPath. We can kick off a Bizagi process, which is more times than not the preferred effort, and then that process can actually orchestrate a series of bots. We can actually kick off some more decision management, or we can actually more simply just get it from a group email box, understand what this is, and then route it to another email box so someone can take action on that. The last part, though, and the most important and the differentiator is the training. So one of the most challenging, or the biggest challenge that we saw with our customers was how do I train machine learning and how do I improve its accuracy and how to make it sustainable. So this solution from us that you'll see a little bit later allows the business to actually create an instance, train it, maintain and administer it over time with no IT assistance whatsoever. So that's important because the business are the domain experts on what this information is and how it should be handled, so we should give them the empowerment to do that from that perspective. Example is one of our clients has a shared email box, about 35 different request types that are coming into it from a servicing contact center. They deployed this within about 2 weeks. Within the first day when they deployed it, they loaded up with a bunch of previous emails and examples. It was routing about 50% of those requests that were coming in accurately. After 3 weeks, it was routing 85% of all email requests over 35 different request types accurately. So it provides a lot of value, right? Because no one likes sitting and routing emails all day. This is a high-level picture of a solution we provided for one client using it. So as you can see, via either text messages, emails, or free-form text that was coming in via web forms, comes into the router looks at that, understands the email. And now we're not talking about attachments here, we're actually looking at the body of the email and understanding what it is that they're asking. Are they asking for a beneficiary change? Are they asking for address change, servicing, those types of things that may be coming in from a policyholder's perspective. It then can kick off a process if it knows what it is. If it doesn't know what it is, it goes out to a human. Human says, hey, let me figure out what this is, and they can kick off a process, and then it actually goes out and automates the end solution. One of the interesting things, though, is as it routes it to the individuals and they're performing their actions and they're making decisions, we're actually capturing that behind the scenes and updating the machine learning automatically. So someone doesn't have to go in there and specifically, oh, it was this, it was that. By looking at the behavior they're doing, we can determine what the right action is and update the machine learning behind the scenes for them. So a couple examples that are using this. So this is one from a credit union that I actually manage from a strategic perspective. This scenario was in their commercial servicing division, where they had about 9 individuals that were managing 4 email boxes, shared email boxes, handling about 4,000 to 5,000 requests per month. Of those 4,000 to 5,000, we identified about 120 different request types that were coming in. These 9 individuals were working in 3-hour shifts. The reason for the 3-hour shifts was because they found out from a business perspective, if they worked more than 3 hours, the employees were quitting because they hated doing this work, because they're basically looking at emails, understanding what's coming in, and then just giving it to someone else, or putting it in the system and classifying it. It is this request, it is this request, it is this request, it is this type of request, and then having them work on that. So very low value add, repeatable, mundane work. After about 3 to 4 weeks in production, it's about automating and routing about 80% of those requests now. We're never going to get to the 100%, and to try to do that would be ludicrous. Some of the reasons why. A lot of email requests that are coming in through the router don't have any body. It's just basically an attachment. So in that case, we route it to their data capture utility, and then that performs the actions on that, or route it to the RPA bot that can look at it, look at the file, understand what the type of file it is, drag the content from that. So what we're trying to do is, how do we take unstructured content in an email, understand the intent, pull information from it when there is no attachment with it. And in this case, 70% of all those requests that are coming in don't have an attachment at all. So that's one scenario. In a savings perspective, about 6,000 FTE hours, so about 3.5 FTEs per year savings on that. Okay. Another one was in the pharma industry, and this one was around adverse event reporting. I don't know if you have any pharma or life sciences people in the room, but from this perspective, is if there's an incident and you call in or you send an email, in this case they had web forms that were provided. I could report an incident with maybe my, I have diabetes and my injection or whatever it is, I want to report an incident with that or with a side effect of a medication. In this case, it wasn't emails that were coming in, they were coming in through web form, but because of the multitude of types of products that they had out there, the multiple types of different incidents that they may not even know exist yet, or hence the reason for it, they're coming in. The forms are pretty dumbed down, and they allow a big box to say, okay, please explain a description. Well, that really is more valuable, and from the description, we can ascertain more information from that to who actually this needs to go to, for either from reporting, compliance perspectives, and then routing and resolution and follow-up. So from that perspective, that's what we're using it here for there was, fill out the web form, the description, we go in there and understand, okay, this is for this department, that department, depending on what was actually reported in free form within the text of the body of the form, okay? And the last one, and this is what we're gonna be walking through from a demo perspective today, and we'll dive into this scenario a little bit further. This is around automation order management. So I'm just gonna dive into kind of the problem and then what the customer was looking for and the client was looking for from that perspective. So this was an electrical supply company that was challenged with handling of orders, and 40% of their orders that were coming in via email. Because the type of customer they had, they just were sending in emails either with or without attachments to it. What's the problem with that? Well, inconsistent handling time, right? The customer expects when I hit send, you got it, you're working on it instantaneously. And if you're like me, we only have one email ever in our email box, right? And as soon as we get it, we respond to it because we're doing nothing more than sitting there and waiting for those emails to come in, which is not true, right? So there was that aspect of it. The other aspect of the challenge that we had, or they had, was about 60% of those orders weren't being matched to the quote because I'm asking people to manually do this, and I'm hoping they're going to do it, but they're not necessarily following consistently the manual process that we want them to handle. And what's the problem with not matching it to the quote? Well, order comes in, I don't match it to the quote, which has special pricings and benefits and discounting to it. I then process it as a different type of order. It gets sent to them, and they get an invoice. It's wrong. Now there's all this over-processing and poor customer experience that I have to handle and go through that. Last point, though, 30% of the orders that were coming in via email were duplicates that were coming in. Why? Because they had a multi-channel support. They still had a web portal that they could go in and customers could place orders, but more times than not, people were calling in. So they would call in, and the contact center would pick up the phone and say, "How can I help you?" And they'd say, "I haven't seen my order," and they had no way of checking it because the person that was doing the email processing was supposed to go into Salesforce and update Salesforce contact record that, hey, I've got an order from this customer. They weren't doing that. So when the customer calls in, they don't see it, they create another order, and now I think you know what the problem is with that. So what were their goals? Improve overall customer experience. They want a consistency across all channels, a common process across all channels, and then at the end of the day, they wanted to basically reduce the manual effort because no one liked doing this job, right? So to pictorially demonstrate what this scenario was, and we'll walk through it, orders were coming in via email. Oh, wow. That was amazing. And then we got it on recording too, which is even cooler. All right, so orders are coming in via email, and what the hero, right, is supposed to be doing is one, just goes into the CRM system, in this case, Salesforce, just validate, right? One of the surprising things that we found out through this scenario was a lot of orders that were coming in may be from customers they don't even service today, and I was kind of blown away by that. And it wasn't a huge percentage, but it was enough that they have to actually look them up. So is this a customer that we service today? Yes or no? Because if it's not, then it's a new business process. They have to check the quote. They also have to look at, do we sell these items? So of course they're a vendor to their customer who has multiple vendors, and they may be asking them for an item that's from their competitor. So look that up, validate all that information. He's supposed to also go into update Salesforce. As we just mentioned before, that wasn't happening. Update Salesforce so we understand that an order was placed, the record came in. Then go back, call the customer, verify, hey, is this what you ordered? Is this correct? Et cetera, here's what we're seeing. And then finally place that order in SAP. So that's the manual process that they were doing when we walked in today. What that looks like, and again, take a step back. So what we had, the major challenge we had was, okay, how do we even deal with these emails coming in, right? And is this a new order? Is this a modification to existing order? Or is this I want to delete this order? So from that perspective, we use our kind of request router to handle that. We kind of talked about that. So here was the scenario for the future state of what we designed and piloted for them. So the email is still coming in from the end users, but instead of actually someone sitting there on these email boxes and looking at them and trying to figure out what's going on, the cognitive request router using natural language processing looks at that, understands the intent, and then kicks off the right process within Bizagi that then orchestrates that fulfillment of that process, new order, modification, or cancellation of order. Within that new order process, though, there's several steps that we saw that need to happen, and those steps are actually being performed by robots that are done in UiPath today. And if there's any problems, right, within that process, it's going to kick it off for exception handling. So the only time the person actually gets engaged is if one, for whatever reason why the cognitive request router doesn't understand or can't understand with a height of confidence level what they're asking, it's going to kick it off for that. Or if there's any problems with the bots are going to reach out to the process, say, I don't know, the process is going to route it for exception handling depending on what the problem was, human interaction resolution, and then complete. I'm not going to cough anymore. The other part that it does here is a few things. It's going to actually validate via electronically by sending out a notification via email to the customers asking them to validate the order. So I have to pick up the phone and call them. And then if they validate it's correct, goes back to the process, and then we actually update SAP and the order is complete. Okay? This is the Bizagi process that Bill will be walking through today. So you can see we look up, email comes in. First step it does is going to look up the customer in Salesforce. If there's any issues, it's going to actually triage that request by giving it to the order management team for manual processing. They're going to process, in this case, there's a PO attached with it, do inventory lookup, create the case within Salesforce. If there's no issues, then go back to the customer with a response, have them verify, and then if everything's good, place the order in SAP. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Bill. He'll walk you through it.
I don't think I need that, right? I mean, this is just going to be the demo, so. So can we get the demo started up?
Here, you just got to, you have to go to the next one, I think.
Okay, so as Matt described, the first step in our process is we're going to actually send an email into our cognitive request router. So here you see in our demo, we're actually address it to an instance of our cognitive request router that's going to be monitoring the inbox. So in just a moment, it should start doing that. Okay, so we have there the address of the cognitive request router for this instance. So we're going to go ahead and send this email in. You still running? Looks like we paused. Nope, there it's going. Okay, so we're going to put a subject in, something about I need a new order. What does it say? This is a new order. Then we'll write some text in the email. I need a few items. I need a few things soon. And then, as Matt mentioned, in this particular instance, we actually have our purchase order in an Excel spreadsheet. So we're going to go ahead and bring that up and give you a look at what's actually in there. So as you can see, we have a couple line items in there. And you can notice one of the things that's interesting to notice is the unit prices there. We have $299 and $10 for our unit price because we actually want to check that those are right in our inventory management system. So that'll become important later in the demo. So okay, so we've shown the purchase order, we're attaching the purchase order to the email, and we're sending it into the cognitive request router. So the cognitive request router that we can see here is sitting and monitoring this email in basket. So in just a moment, we're going to refresh this, and you'll see that the new email is going to appear. Right there, you see a few seconds ago, we got a new order, and you can see the classification of 99%. That means the cognitive request router has determined with a confidence of 99% that this is in fact a new order. You can see that a number of those have different confidence levels. Here we're going in and actually, you can do this. You can go in and look at the actual email that came in, and you can look at how the cognitive request router classified it. It was 99% sure it was a new order, 1% modify order, and it does other natural language processing. So at this point, it's going to route it into the Bizagi process. And you can see here, we put this in just for demo purposes to actually stop the RPA bots so that we could demo it. Otherwise, things would kick off in the background. But we want to do this so that we can actually show what's going to happen on the Bizagi and RPA side. So we're going to go ahead and do that. As Matt described the process, the first thing the bots are doing is it's logging into Salesforce, and it's going to take a look and see whether the person who sent in this email from BP3.com is someone we know about. So we've determined that that is a customer we do business with. The next thing, it's going to start reading the attachments. It looks at the purchase order. It grabs the information on the purchase order out of the Excel spreadsheet. It's then going to kick off another UI bot that's going to bring up our inventory management system. The inventory management system is going to take a look at all the line items that were part of that Excel spreadsheet. It's going to look at our current pricing information, gather that information into our order in Bizagi. And then we're going to go back into Salesforce, as Matt was talking about the duplicate order problem. So we're actually going to go back into Salesforce now and create a case contact record for this particular order so that there's a record of it having come in through email. So it goes in, it enters information about the Bizagi case number, the email that came in, the Excel spreadsheet, and so on and so forth. And at this point, it now sends an order confirmation back out to the original user. You could say there's a Bizagi order to be processed. So at this point, it's up to the customer to go in and say, you know, check out the order. Is this really what I wanted? If there's any discrepancies, they can kick off something different. But we look at it here. It's got a link back into Bizagi, the case link. So at this point, we'll go in. We'll take a look at that particular order. So this now goes back into the Bizagi case order, takes a look at the information that was gathered from the various bots, the customer who sent it in, shipping address, the line items. One of the things I was mentioning before, you can see that some of these things are in red and there's some special processing notes. When we look up in the inventory management system, we can actually tell whether there's any pricing discrepancies between what's coming in the purchase order and what's in our inventory management system currently. So we highlight those in red and bring those to the customer attention that hey, you know, the price you put in there of $10 isn't really right. A MacBook Pro is really $23.99. So the customer can review this. If they want, they could go in and modify the order, or they can say, yes, this looks good. We calculate out subtotals, tax, shipping, total everything up. You can also see special instructions. This is really just mimicking back the email text that the customer had sent in his email. So once we decide that everything is good here and that things are right, we're going to go down and approve and process the order. So as Matt was describing the process, at this point, we're going back into Bizagi. We're going to do our back office processing now. We're going to fulfill the order through SAP. You can see Bizagi says, I don't have any more tasks. So at this point, Bizagi is now going to, after it processes things in SAP, it's going to send an email back to the customer saying, yes, we've completed your order. It's ready for shipping. And we should be bringing up email soon. Okay, so we'll refresh our inbox. You can see that Bizagi has sent another email back out to the customer. Here's all the confirmation of the order, the totals, tax, so on and so forth. And that's pretty much the end of the straight-through processing. Now, the other thing Matt was talking about was one of the abilities of the cognitive request router is to actually take a look at this thing and decide how confident are we that this is a new order. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go in and take a look at what happens to one that had a lower confidence level. So if you remember back in the process, there was an item called triage request, and that's if we take a look at something and we see that we're not confident about what it really was. So we're going to bring up an instance that we had sent into Bizagi that had a lower than 90% confidence level, which is how this was actually set up. So at this point, you know, this is somebody back on the electrical supply side saying, okay, what was this thing? We can take a look at the email text and they can decide whether it was a new order, whether it was a cancel order, or whether it was a modification of an order. We can see in this case, we decide that it was a modification order. So we're going to click on the modify order item at the bottom. And what this will do is this will actually kick off the modify order process rather than the new order process. And at the same time, automatically, it will go back through APIs and update the cognitive request router to say, hey, this thing you sent me, this was not a new order, you know, and you knew it was low confidence. This was actually a modify process order. So at that point, we're continually training the cognitive request router to get better and better at looking at this text and deciding what it really is. So really, without having to deploy new code, the cognitive request router is getting smarter all the time at handling these things about how they ultimately should be processed. And I think that's pretty much the end of this. Do we go back into anything? Nope, that's it.
So any questions or? Yep. Yeah, so one of the, can you repeat the question? Yeah. So, is my mic on? Yes, challenges with bringing all that together within a solution. So one of the things, the challenge that we had is it seemed too daunting to the customer, and they had actually tried some of this. Our first customer that we created the cognitive request router for, and so we identified what were the challenges that we had. One, just using a natural language processing API and the training. So the training was the biggest challenge. How do I continuously train and understand, and then how do I can train over time and have it be smarter and smarter and smarter as we go. So that's why we created the solution the way we did and solved it so that you don't have to, the client, worry about that. Also, we built in the connections and the connectors to basically initiate BPM processes. So those routes you see, and we don't have a live version of it, or I can go into it and I can just basically say that when we identify a request type, we can associate routing logic and then perform an action on that. What's the action you want to take on this? And from there, we have a selection where you can say, I want to call a BPM process, and then you can identify the process you want to call and invokes. Same with an RPA bot, if it's going to go connect to the orchestrator, whatever, or whoever else we're working with, to do that as well as initiate a bot. I'd say the biggest challenge though was one, getting the training data, and like machine learning, right? And it's been said before, I heard, I think somewhere today, the machine isn't learning anything. We're training it. We're telling it. A human is telling it what to do, right? And from those patterns, it's recognizing and making judgments on what things could be. So the training, getting the data, and then training it, and then making it smarter over time, right? And so it's accurate. That's the technology challenges. The other challenge is building the confidence with the business that this worked. Because to them it seemed like sci-fi, this is so unreal. So for the one customer, that was and here this use case, we ran first education sessions with them just to demystify what this all is from an automation perspective. And then we ran this process in parallel. And we actually showed the level of accuracy of their performance and timing versus how this was performing. And that was after about a month of training. We felt confident, okay, now let's compete, right? Who's better? And we named, in this case, we named it Carol. So Carol, our automated bot or intelligent router versus the team. Okay? And you get a $5 gift card from Starbucks for asking a question. Anyone else want to ask a question or get a free gift card? It can be about anything. My personal life. Anyway, yeah?
I do it because I saw a gift card.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. From a managing point of view, and especially from your customer's point of view,
Mm-hmm.
especially because you have this robotic part as well, how do your customers manage if the process changes? So the Excel changes, or the process changes, or Salesforce gets an update, Bizagi gets an update.
Yep.
Are your customers able to manage it on their own?
Yeah, so I think there's two, sorry. The question was, how are you managing the change of the process or the endpoint systems that you're dependent on, like Salesforce? If there's a change, how are they doing that, and are they doing it on their own? I think I kind of got that correct from what you asked. So I'll start with the last question and go back from there. So do they do it on their own? So in a lot of our clients' perspective, we actually do the bot operation management of that. Because with, not to be a whole RPA like session, but with bots, there's a certain level of care and feeding that you have to do to them because of the dependencies on third-party systems that we don't have control over. So we provide operational management support for those bots. So if there is an issue with the system, we can identify, triage, make the change, and get it back up and running. We're not going to prevent that there's an issue that happens, but we can affect the amount of time that there's an outage on that from that perspective. So that's more from the RPA perspective. From the BPM perspective, it's just good change management. So a lot of our clients, we deploy changes every week or every 2 weeks from our deployment pipeline of how we manage that. So it's just continuous deployment, small changes frequently to address, and then having those windows, right? So when something does go wrong, we don't have to go and create all these ad hoc out of, get it back up and running processes. We've got windows we can do things. I don't know if that answered your question or not. Okay. Cool. Yes?
Can you talk a little bit about the triage that you just mentioned? What kind of issues tend to arise?
Okay, the question was, can I talk about the triage and the types of issues that we see and how do we address them accurately? I would say that from this pattern, if I'm focusing particularly on this type of scenario, which is mostly request management for servicing, as the pattern that we've seen again and again and again, as well as, it doesn't matter. We'll stay on that one. It mostly has to do with on the RPA side, with the dependency on the third-party systems. So in this case, we showed Salesforce going through with an RPA bot, going through the UI, human interface, right? And that was a step, right? Final solution, and this is the last question, from a final solution where we want to get and where we're going to go is to go through the API layer of Salesforce, because that's a more solid and dependable integration. And we want to do that ultimately. But the problem that we had for this customer was, one, they've never integrated with Salesforce before. We had to go through security, enterprise architecture, and the business needed something now. So it was a stepping stone, a progression of automation, right, from a maturity model perspective and where we want to go. So we're not always saying this is what we're going to do and we're going to live with this forever, right? So, yeah. So we're good. Well, thank you all for coming. And if you have questions or want to see something, we can stop at our booth. We're outside. I've got this live and running, and we can show you whatever you want to do. Or if you just want to talk and chat, that's cool too, right? Enjoy the rest of your conference. Thank you.